I don't think people realize we already have a lot of socialism. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment insurance, food stamps, veterans benefits, Pell Grants, COVID-era payments, farm subsidies, disability payments, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, corporate bailouts, and the jobs program that is building weapons the Pentagon doesn't even want. All that is socialism, much of it appropriate to soften the edges of capitalism. But the DSA are radicals about this concept, and radical economic policy is always ineluctably married to radical social policy. Their platform, for example, calls for completely open borders. They're for what Biden was doing, but more.
Bernie Sanders has shifted from critiquing the oligarchy to promoting full socialism, but Bill Maher isn't holding back. Maher blasted Sanders' hypocrisy, highlighting how he profited from capitalism, delivering a blistering, unapologetic dismantling of his socialist sermon.
Democratic socialism is like a dating profile. Things look great until you meet up in the real world. For example, Bernie Sanders, his big thing was always bringing single-payer health care to our country of 340 million. But when liberal, tie-dyed Vermont tried to do it for a population of 626,000, it collapsed like that poor in the Oval Office last week. Bernie, AOC, Mandani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think people know that yet.
Maher highlights a truth many overlook. Politicians like Bernie Sanders, AOC, and Zoran Mani portray themselves as social democrats, but their policies lean towards socialism. The distinction is key. Social democrats support capitalism with strong safety nets, allowing markets to drive the economy while the government ensures fairness. Socialists, on the other hand, push for major industries to be publicly owned or tightly controlled by the state, reducing private enterprises' role. Maher isn't afraid to call out this ideological gap, emphasizing how important it is to understand the real direction behind their policies.
And again, this is against why people sometimes, I think, question some of what you're saying. This is a survey, student loan forgiveness recipients. 73% of applicants say they are likely to spend their extra money on non-essential, including vacations, smartphone, drugs, and alcohol. They admitted that to the pollster.
Who is this pollster?
NBC News. 52% they are likely to buy new clothing. 46% they would use the money for vacation and eat out at restaurants. This is why people have a thing about, I would never call it free money. Oh, I guess I just did.
That's the true American spirit. Most Americans strongly resist a shift toward a heavily controlled socialist system where the government dictates essentials like food or basic needs. They value choice, freedom, and the ability to build for themselves. Even with capitalism's flaws, polls Maher cited show people still prefer it over rigid government alternatives. Americans want reform, not control, improvement, not replacement. That's why Sanders and his circle are likely to fall short. Speeches may sound noble, but everyday Americans instinctively reject a reality where governments dictate everything, unwilling to trade individual freedom for rigid ideological experiments.
We just increased military spending with very little discussion. I don't know if you know this, by $80 billion. Military industrial complex.
Including the Democrats.
Pardon me?
The Democrats vote for it too.
Yes, absolutely correct. Absolutely right. All right.
But that's socialism, the military. That's crony socialism.
Well, that's
right?
Crony capitalism.
But the military isn't capitalism. That's the government.
No, but it's who owns the military industrial complexes. All right. But anyhow.
Right.
All right. So when you talk about giveaways, you have major corporations in this country that make billions in profit, don't pay a nickel in taxes. Billionaires have an effective tax rate lower than that of a truck driver or a nurse. You have a generation, you talk about this younger generation right now. I got around the country and I talked to a lot of people. You know, I don't know anything about that poll, but I can tell you, I've talked to nurses who are working their asses off, doing the right thing. They leave school $70,000 in that. They can't afford now to get married and have children.
Yes, but that doesn't mean the solution is rushing into full-blown socialism. Maher is right. The issues Bernie Sanders highlights, rising costs, corporate greed, and financial pressure on young people, are real, but fixing them doesn't require dismantling the entire system. Take student loan debt, for example. Blanket forgiveness unfairly shifts responsibility onto taxpayers who never attended college. A smarter approach is systemic reform. Cap tuition increases, expand income-based repayment tied to actual earnings, and offer tax credits to employers who help pay off loans. This preserves accountability, eases student burdens, pressures colleges to lower costs, and provides meaningful solutions without resorting to radical, disruptive experiments.
I don't think people realize we already have a lot of socialism. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment insurance, food stamps, veterans benefits, Pell Grants, COVID-era payments, farm subsidies, disability payments, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, corporate bailouts, and the jobs program that is building weapons the Pentagon doesn't even want. All that is socialism, much of it appropriate to soften the edges of capitalism. But the DSA are radicals about this concept, and radical economic policy is always ineluctably married to radical social policy. Their platform, for example, calls for completely open borders. They're for what Biden was doing, but more.
Maher continues warning Democrats about the dangers of empowering figures like Sanders and Manny. He notes that America already has programs with socialist roots, Social Security, Medicare, and public education, designed to ease economic hardship without dismantling capitalism. These safety nets support people, not replace the private sector. Yet Maher stresses that the new wave of self-styled social democrats seeks a far more radical shift, edging toward full socialism, with sweeping government control and policies that could weaken national interests. Their push for lenient border rules, critics argue, risks security. For Maher, this isn't idealism, it's a reckless experiment with the country's stability.
You think you're going to win an election on that? This just seems like more extremism at a time when Americans are begging both parties, please, could just one of you act normal? It's either defund the police or military in the streets. Either MAGA's crypto crony capitalism or city-run grocery stores. No, I don't want that. I want a Democrat who reassures me if you like your Whole Foods, you can keep your Whole Foods.
Maher delivers a blunt warning to the DNC, cautioning that they may not see power again soon if they keep chasing ideological fads, with socialism as the latest obsession. He argues the party repeatedly pursues whatever trend dominates activist circles. In the last election, it was wokeness, which alienated moderates and independents. Now, socialism is being pushed aggressively by the loudest voices. While Americans face rising costs, weak borders, and cultural overreach, Maher says the DNC continues drifting into political fantasies that appeal to Twitter activists but repel the voters they need. Persisting on this path, he warns, will lead to more lost elections.
Governor-elect Spanberger once said about Biden's presidency that, quote, nobody elected him to be FDR. They elected him to be normal. Normal! You know, at this year's DSA convention, or as it's commonly known, Comic-Con, get this, you had to submit a photo of a negative COVID test to get in 2025. Yeah, no one wants to do that again.
Maher argues the Democratic Party won't win another major election until it returns to basic political normalcy. Voters are exhausted by constant ideological swings, cultural crusades, and performative politics. Many Democrats share this concern, noting the party has focused too much on symbolic battles instead of practical solutions. Maher insists it's time to abandon extremist policies and prioritize issues that truly affect people's lives: affordable living, border security, economic stability, public safety, and effective governance. Until the DNC chooses substance over spectacle, he believes it will continue alienating moderates and losing elections it should easily win.
These democratic socialists at another of their conventions, they were told to make jazz hands instead of clapping, lest some delegates suffer sensory overload. And also, and I'm not joking, they were told not to be wearing, any aggressive scents.
Please don't go into that space with anything that's like an aggressive scent, for instance, right? Because that's going to be difficult for people.
Oh, This, really? This is who the Democrats are thinking of following. You know, Chuck Schumer ain't perfect, but at least he doesn't crumple into a heap when confronted with Chanel number 5. You may now clap in the traditional way.
This new breed of socialist Democrats seems like a fusion of woke culture and hard left economics. From awkward, jazz hands applause to stylistic choices signaling ideological purity, everything feels performative. Instead of competence or clarity, it's constant self-censorship, tiptoeing around imagined offenses. The focus on symbolism over substance leaves voters exhausted and rolling their eyes, seeing the movement as unserious and more about signaling sensitivity than delivering real political solutions. This blend of wokeness and socialism creates a confusing, performative ideology that alienates the very people it claims to represent.
When FDR was president, when Truman was president, even when JFK was president, you go out on the street and you say to people, which party represents the working class of America? Most people, I think, agree, would have said the Democratic Party.
Correct.
All right. Today you go out on the street and that is not the sentiment. In fact, the Republican Party probably has more adherents than the Democrats.
How did that happen?
I'll tell you how it happened. It happened because 30 years ago, the Democrats said, hey, Republicans are getting all this corporate money. We want it too. Let's go out and get it. And let's forget about the people who are working 50 or 60 hours a week. So you're sitting out there somewhere in the Midwest. You can't afford health care. Maybe your job went to China and you're earning half of what you used to make. Your kid can't afford to go to college.
The real reason people are gravitating toward the Republican Party runs deeper than ideology. Democrats have drifted so far into wokeness that they've lost focus on issues that matter to everyday Americans. Instead of supporting the working class, the backbone of their traditional base, they chase symbolic battles, identity debates, and fringe cultural obsessions that don't improve lives. Workers struggling with rising costs, families trying to stay afloat, and communities facing crime, weak borders, and failing services feel abandoned. Chasing online applause from small activist circles has replaced practical solutions, driving core voters away. When a party prioritizes the periphery over its foundation, its base eventually walks.
We've got to restore hope to the American people. Working class are the majority of people in this country. They are hurting. After 50 years of exploding technology, they're earning less than they did before. All right?
You sound like you're running again. Third time.
I'm just talking about the book here.
Third time the charm. People usually write a book when they're about to run.
Well, no.
That's true, Bernie. Many of the issues you highlight are real. Ordinary Americans are feeling pressure from rising costs, student debt, and a shrinking middle class. But the solution isn't to swing hard into wokeness or embrace full-blown socialism. Combining the two would worsen the country's struggles. Wokeness turns every discussion into a cultural minefield, stifling honest dialogue, while socialism concentrates power in the state, limiting freedom and innovation that have driven America's progress. Together, they prioritize symbolism over solutions and ideological purity over practical governance. Americans want policies that strengthen the economy, protect freedoms, and support working families, not endless cultural policing or government control. Maher's warning is clear. The Democratic Party must refocus on real, practical solutions, jobs, security, education, and economic stability, rather than chasing symbolic battles. Until they do, the working class will drift toward alternatives that prioritize substance over spectacle, leaving the party's electoral future uncertain.